Today, we're going to explore a really radical new idea about how to build truly intelligent AI. What if, instead of starting with engineering principles, we started with the most powerful story of intelligence we know, our own evolution?
To really get into this, we have to start with the most fundamental question, the one that drives the entire field of artificial intelligence.
And that is, what is intelligence? You know, there are dozens of definitions out there, everything from the ability to achieve goals to a measure of skill acquisition efficiency. But here's the thing, while we can't all agree on one answer, the way we try to answer this question fundamentally shapes the kind of AI we end up building. For a long, long time, the most common approach has been to treat intelligence like an engineering problem. You design this big cognitive architecture with all these different modules, one for memory, one for learning, another for control, and then you try to optimize each piece. It's basically like building a machine from a very detailed blueprint.
But what if that's not the only way to do it? What if that entire premise is kind of wrong? It turns out there's a whole other path, a completely different way of thinking about how intelligence actually comes to be.
And this slide, it just lays out the two core philosophies perfectly. On one side, you've got that cognition-centric approach we just talked about, engineering from a blueprint. But on the other, you have this emergencist approach, growing from a seed. The idea here is that intelligence isn't something you build directly. It's something that emerges when an agent has to survive and adapt in a really complex, always changing world. And that right there brings us to the core idea of this new way of thinking. It proposes that if we really want to create open-ended intelligence, we need to ground it in the exact same processes that created our own, our origins. So this leads us to a really crucial concept called open-ended skill acquisition, or OESA for short. You see, this is a uniquely human trait that current AI really struggles with. It's our endless curiosity. It's that drive to not just solve the problems in front of us, but to constantly invent new ones and then go learn the skills to tackle those. Now, to understand how this works, we have to look at this powerful idea from evolutionary biology, one that was, for a very long time, kind of overlooked. As a group of leading biologists put it, niche construction is the neglected process in evolution. So what on earth is niche construction? Well, it's a simple but really profound idea that organisms aren't just passive victims of their environment. No, they actively shape it. The classic example is a beaver building a dam. That dam totally changes the ecosystem, right? And that, in turn, creates new evolutionary pressures that shape the future of beavers. We're all active participants in our own evolutionary story. This is the Origins framework, and it's brilliant. It models intelligence as this escalating feedback loop. So first, you have a complex, unstable environment that creates challenges. This forces agents to become more flexible, to adapt. That, in turn, leads to complex social dynamics. You get cooperation and competition. And finally, that creates culture, where knowledge and tools are passed on, which then loops all the way back around and changes the environment all over again. Okay, so how do you actually test this? I mean, this framework isn't just a theory on paper. Researchers are now using it to run these fascinating experiments, creating artificial worlds that simulate these exact same evolutionary pressures. For example, we think a key factor in human evolution was the incredibly unstable climate of ancient East Africa. So, researchers are creating these simulated environments that actually mimic this pulsed climate variability, with wild swings between wet and dry periods, just to see how it forces AI agents to adapt. And the results from these simulations are, well, they're pretty striking. This chart shows how the environment affects an agent's plasticity, which is basically just its ability to change and adapt. In a perfectly stable, easy world, agents become rigid specialists. They have low plasticity. But in a challenging, low-resource world, they are forced to become highly flexible. It's the challenge itself that drives adaptation. And just look at what this kind of training produces. These are AI agents that have developed what's called sensorium motor agency, which is a fancy way of saying they have a deep awareness of their own body and how to use it. As you can see on the right, even when part of its body gets damaged, the agent doesn't just give up. It adapts its shape and figures out a new way to keep moving. I mean, that's true resilience right there. And you know, it's not just about the physical world either. These simulations are also testing how social structures affect problem solving. And what they're finding is that the most innovative groups are the ones that switch between periods of being isolated and periods of being connected, a pattern that, amazingly, mirrors how ecological barriers probably shaped early human populations. So let's zoom back out. What does all of this really mean?
Because the implications here, they go far beyond just building smarter robots or more advanced AI. This is what some are calling the humanist perspective on AI. The goal isn't just to make AI more like us. The real goal is to use these incredibly complex simulations as computational tools, like virtual laboratories, to test hypotheses about our own evolution and our own deep, mysterious past.
And this whole perspective is grounded in such a beautiful and powerful idea, captured perfectly in this quote by the physicist Sean Carroll. It suggests that what makes us special isn't some grand cosmic purpose handed to us. It's our ability to care, to be curious, and to decide what matters in the world. That is where all meaning comes from.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty provocative thought. Maybe the quest to build artificial intelligence isn't just an engineering challenge after all. Maybe it's also a journey of self-discovery, forcing us to ask, could the best way to build an AI be to first truly understand ourselves?